In this video, I'm going to talk about divorced spousal Social Security benefits. If you are divorced and wondering what your options are for Social Security, then you want to keep watching. Welcome back. This is episode 199. In this week's episode, we are discussing divorced spousal Social Security benefits. And if you are divorced and approaching age 62, you may be wondering if you qualify for a Social Security benefit from an ex-spouse, known as a Social Security divorce spousal benefit. And we'll be covering what determines your eligibility, how much you could receive, when it makes sense to collect that benefit if you qualify, as well as going over some examples. Before we get into that, as a reminder, if you are serious about getting a plan in place for your retirement, then consider signing up for my online retirement planning course, Retirement Readiness Review. It's an online course where I educate you on what you need to know about planning the ideal retirement. I cover taxes, Social Security, Medicare, investing, estate planning, and much more. And the best part is that you're able to go through it at your own pace and you have lifetime access to the material. So to learn more, head over to retirewithryan.com and click on courses. So as I mentioned, if you're divorced and approaching age 62, you may be eligible for a divorced spousal Social Security benefit. And according to a recent study from MassMutual, 4 in 10 Americans nearing retirement don't know that divorced people can collect spousal Social Security benefits based off their ex-spouse's earning record. Many women especially don't realize this, and even those that do are sometimes hesitant to request this benefit because they're fearful that this will anger their ex-spouse. And they're under false assumptions that their ex-spouse will be notified when they apply for this benefit, or that their ex-spouse's Social Security benefit will somehow be reduced. And the benefit rules are gender neutral and have been that way since 1983. The rules are also applicable to same-sex couples who marry and divorce. Now, in practice, more women are affected as they earn less than men on average and are more likely to be stay-at-home parents and caregivers. And according to the most recent Social Security Administration data, women make up to 95% of the more than 657,000 people currently receiving a spousal or survivor benefit on the basis that it was granted as the marriage that ended. So it's definitely an important topic that we're going to cover. So let's first start with what makes you eligible for this benefit. And you're eligible for a benefit from your ex-spouse if the following conditions apply. First, your marriage needs to have lasted at least 10 years. You need to currently be unmarried, because if you remarry, now you're eligible for a spousal benefit off your new spouse. And if you happen to have been divorced twice and were married 10 years or longer both times, then you actually could qualify for 2 benefits and you'd be able to pick from the higher of the 2. Next, your ex-spouse needs to be 62 or older and eligible for benefits. So they must have paid into Social Security for 10 years. Your divorce must have occurred 2 years prior to your application. And if so, if you're applying, your ex-spouse doesn't need to have filed for benefits. They just need to be eligible to collect those benefits, meaning usually age 62 and older. And lastly, your own benefit must not be higher than the spousal benefit. So let's talk about what that means. So with Social Security, you have the ability to apply for your own benefit or the spousal benefit if you are divorced. And you're able to get the higher of the 2. However, anytime you apply, you're not able to restrict your application just to the spousal benefit for most people, with an exception that I'll talk about in a minute. So this is known as deemed filing. So you're eligible for up to half of your ex-spouse's benefit. That's what a spousal benefit is, or your own benefit if it's higher. So if your benefit is more than half of your ex-spouse's benefit, then you're not going to be eligible to collect half of their benefit because your benefit is higher and you wouldn't want to take a lesser benefit, so you'd want to collect your own benefit. However, there is an exception to this that still applies to some people. So if you were born before January 2nd, 1954, you can file what is known as a restricted application, where you can receive that full 50% of your ex-spouse's full retirement benefit from now until age 70, while your own benefit delays credits. And I've talked about this in past episodes, and if we do the math here, anyone born in 1954 or later is turning 70 this year, so you only have a number of months to actually do this. So this would be applicable for anyone who's turning 70 this year. Anyone born before 1954, born after January 2nd, 1954, is not able to do this. So that's why I was mentioning earlier, if you are born after 1954 or later, when you apply, you're going to be getting either your own benefit or half of your ex-spouse's, whichever is greater. But for those born before 1954, you could restrict your benefit. So let's say your benefit is, or your birthday is December of this year, you're going to be turning 70, you're just realizing that you could have been collecting off of your ex-spouse. You could apply, get up to half of your ex-spouse's benefit or half of your ex-spouse's benefit. You could receive that benefit until you turn 70 later this year, and then at that point you want to switch over to your own benefit at age 70, assuming it was greater than half of your ex-spouse's. Now, some other things that you should know. Benefits for current spouses or other ex-spouses are not affected, which means that other benefits payable from your ex-spouse will not be affected. So if your ex-spouse is collecting, should have no impact on what they're receiving, or will have no impact on what they're receiving. Or if they have other ex-spouses, this is not going to have any impact on what they're receiving. As an ex-spouse, if you qualify for those things that we talked about, you're eligible to get up to half of your ex-spouse's benefits. And there's also nothing they can do to stop you, meaning that if you have an ex-spouse that you have a contentious relationship, you are afraid that they're going to do something to stop you from getting this benefit, they have no control over this. Also, divorce proceedings or divorce settlements have nothing to do with this. This is something that everyone who qualifies is entitled to as an ex-spouse. The last thing that you should know is that both ex-spouses can claim. So unlike spousal benefits, where under a traditional spousal benefit where you're married, if your spouse is able to get up to half of your benefit, they're the only one that collect. You can't then also collect half of their benefit at the same time. Only one of you can get that. But in this situation, both ex-spouses could get the benefit. So let's go back to my example of age. If you're turning 70 this year, if both you and your spouse are turning 70 this year, you have the same birth year, then you could both collect up to half of each other's benefits. And then at 70, you could switch over to your own benefit. So you have the ability to both collect off each other's benefit if it makes sense. And I'll give another example in a little bit of where that would also make sense. So how much will you receive? Well, that depends how much your own benefit is worth. As I mentioned before, if your benefit is more than half of your ex-spouse's, then and you're born 1954 or later, then most likely you're not going to receive their half of their benefit because your benefit is greater than theirs. But if your benefit is less than half of their benefit, if it's a lot less than half of their benefit, then you can get up to 50% of their full retirement benefit. So let's just say you're born in 1960 or later. Your full retirement age is 67. For anyone born in 1959, your full retirement age is 66 and 10 months. And then every year before that, your full retirement age goes down 2 months. So 1958, full retirement is 66 and 8 months. 1957, 66 and so months. And so on until 1954, full retirement is 66. The reason I'm mentioning this is that if you claim your benefit is 62, to get the full 50%, you'd have to wait until your full retirement age. So in that case, if your full retirement is 67, you'd have to claim your benefit at 67. And there's an online Social Security calculator that I'll put a link in the show notes to, where you can put in your birth date, your benefit, and when you're thinking about collecting, and it'll tell you how much you can receive. And there's lots of charts out there too that have this information. So for example, if your full retirement is 67 and you wanted to collect now at 62, you'd get 32.5% of your ex-spouse's full retirement benefit. If you waited 1 year more until you turned 63, you would get 35%. And that percentage that you can get continues to go up every year until it caps out at 50% when you hit your full retirement, which for everyone not yet collecting this benefit is between 66 and 67. The other thing to remember is that if you claim your Social Security benefit before your full retirement, that goes for your own benefit as well. If you're claiming your own benefit, that is. Either one claiming before full retirement, there's a limit to how much you can earn and receive that Social Security benefit. So Social Security has an earnings limit. I've talked about it before. That for 2024 is $22,320. And that is in play, the earnings limit from 62 until 66. And what that means is that if you earn over that amount in this year and you start collecting your Social Security benefit, your benefit will be reduced for $1 for every $2 you make over that $22,320. So if you're someone who's making $50,000, $60,000 a year, most likely you're not going to receive any of your Social Security benefit. So in that case, even though you could apply for it, if you're making a decent wage, a decent salary, you're probably not going to actually get your benefit. So in that case, you'd have to think about waiting till a later point. So starting in the year that you reach full retirement, you can make a higher amount. This year you can make up to $59,520. And if you make over that, then your benefit is reduced by $1 for every $3 over that. But starting in the month you reach full retirement, there's no limit. So if you wait until your full retirement and you're still working, at that point you could collect your full spousal benefit or even your own full benefit, and you could then receive all of that with no reduction for any earnings that you're making. So keep in mind that, again, although you might be able to collect it, if you have a decent amount of earnings, you might actually not get that benefit. So in that case, it might not make sense to collect. So what if your divorced ex-spouse is now deceased, right? This is known as a surviving divorced spouse benefit. And the same eligibility rules that I mentioned earlier would apply with a few changes that I'll mention shortly. You also would be eligible for the same spousal benefit. Again, it's up to half of your deceased ex-spouse's benefit with a reduction, as I mentioned, if you decide to claim it early before you reach your full retirement age. And you're also still subject to the Social Security earnings limit that I mentioned. However, the two changes are with this deceased ex-spousal Social Security benefit are, one, that you could start claiming benefits as early as age 60 rather than 62. However, there is a reduction, of course. And you could apply for their survivor benefit as a restricted application and let your own benefit grow. So let me explain. Let me give an example. Let's say that your benefit is more than half of your deceased ex-spouse's benefit. Most likely in that situation, you'd be thinking, I'd never get any of my ex-spouse's benefit because mine is more than half. But if you retired, let's say at 65, you don't have any employment income, at that point you could collect, whatever percentage you're eligible for of your ex-spouse's benefit, deceased ex-spouse's benefit, and then let your own benefit continue to grow. Remember, every month that you wait to collect your Social Security benefit, it keeps growing until full retirement by about 0.5%. And then from full retirement to 70, it grows by 8%. And your benefit caps out at 70. So there'd be no reason for anyone to wait past 70 to collect Social Security because there is no increase on your benefit above that. So any point between 60 and 70, you could decide to pursue this strategy if you were either earning less than the Social Security earnings limit, or maybe not a lot more than that, or you were retired, then you could collect the divorced ex-spousal benefit and then possibly switch over to your own benefit after. So how do you apply? Well, there's two ways. You either call the Social Security office or you visit them in person, visit a local office. If you choose to visit a local office, I would suggest you make an appointment to make sure that you're not sitting around and you have an appointment scheduled. So as far as what you'll need, this is online, but you need your birth certificate, marriage certificate, divorce decree, proof of U.S. citizenship or residency, and your employment income information, W-2s, or self-employed tax returns. So let's talk about a few examples of putting this into practice. So let's say Jill's full retirement age is 67, and her full retirement benefit would be $800 a month. Her ex-spouse, Jack, has a full retirement benefit equal to $3,200 a month. So if Jill claimed at age 62, as I mentioned earlier, she'd receive 32.5% of Jack's full retirement benefit of $3,200. So that would give her $1,040 a month. So in this scenario, this benefit would help her because that's more than even her full retirement benefit. Now she could keep waiting until full retirement, and she'd get a full 50% of Jack's full retirement benefit, which would be $1,650 a month. Let's talk about another example. Let's say Sarah has a full retirement age also of 67, and her full retirement benefit is $1,800 a month, and Steve is her ex-spouse, and his full retirement benefit is $3,000 a month. Because her benefit is more than half of Steve's benefit, she's not eligible for that full 50%. Because if she files for her benefit, she's just going to get her own benefit. So either her own benefit at full retirement or a reduced amount if she decided to collect before then. Unless Steve dies before Sarah begins collecting her Social Security benefits. So let's say Steve passed away before Sarah started collecting. In that case, she'd have two choices. She could either collect her own benefit at that point when she retired, or she could collect half of Steve's benefit or whatever amount she's eligible for, and then switch over to her own benefit at 70. Now, what if Sarah died before Steve? Well, again, as I said, either spouse can collect. So in that scenario, if let's say Steve retired at 65, he could collect half of Sarah's $1,800, potentially, giving him $900 a month, and it would be slightly less than that actually, but he'd get some of her benefit, and then at 70, he could switch over to his own benefit to get his full benefit plus that 8% increase per month. Assuming his benefit was $3,000, a 24% increase on that would give him about $3,700 a month. So this is where looking at your information and looking at your ex-spouse's benefits is really important so that you understand what your choices are when you go to claim Social Security. So what should you do if you're divorced? Well, if you are beginning to think about collecting Social Security, you're age 62 or older, and your ex is living or your ex-spouse is deceased, and you're not remarried, and again, you were married 10 years or longer, it's best to contact your ex-spouse if they're still alive and you're on good terms. Or if they're deceased, then you should reach out to Social Security. Or if you don't want to talk to your ex-spouse, also reach out to Social Security, either by phone or making an appointment. That way you can start to understand what your options are and come up with a plan as far as when it makes sense to begin collecting your benefits. And if you're born before 1954 and you have an ex-spouse, make sure that and you're not yet collecting Social Security, make sure that you find out if you're eligible for a benefit and what that would look like to give you a little bit of income if you're considering waiting until 70 to collect your benefits. So I hope you found this information helpful. And as always, if you have a listener question and you'd like to have it considered for a future episode, head over to retirewithryan.com and click on Ask a Question. Have a great week, and I look forward to talking with you next Wednesday. Take care.